Hi, everyone. Welcome. If you can all come on, presenters, everyone there, that's great. Hi, so thank you all very much for joining us. I am Lindsay Scott. I'm the Chief Executive at 39, and we're really delighted that so many of you were able to join us today. There's 166 of you on so far, and it's just going up. So I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes as people still keep joining before we launch into this. So we are thinking of this as a sort of virtual open day. So you're even getting to see Chambers a bit. I'm in Chambers, so I'm at 39. Colin Toman is in Chambers. Jake, you're in Chambers, aren't you? Yeah. Hannah is up in one of our conference rooms. Gethin is not in Chambers. We can't tell where Gethin is. He's probably got ironing boards or something behind him. So he's hiding with a 39 screen behind him. And I think that's all of us who are in Chambers at the moment, but you get a brief, look of, lots of files on shelves, and lots of books behind Colin. Hannah's in one of our conference rooms. We've turned all of our conference rooms, which are on the 5th floor. So we've got this lovely big building in Chancery Lane, and we have 5 floors. And on the 5th floor, we have all of our conference room space. And Hannah, we've changed all of that into virtual hearing rooms. And so Hannah is now in one of our virtual hearing rooms upstairs. So let me just look at where we are. Yeah, we've got probably about another 100 who said they were joining us. So I'm just going to give it one more minute to let everyone come on board before I launch off. But yeah, thank you all very much. So with COVID, we haven't been going to any pupillage fairs. We haven't been doing the same kind of mini pupillages as we've been doing in the past, although we have, thanks to our amazing mini pupillage team, been doing some remote mini pupillages. And we felt that there wasn't really much of an opportunity for you to get to know us or to know what we might be looking for or have a better understanding of who we are, who 39 is, what we feel like, what we're looking for. And so we thought this might be a good opportunity to let you see us all, warts, beard and all, thanks, Charlie, and ask us any questions. So most important thing, I'm now going to start off properly. Welcome to this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining and being interested in us. We're sorry that you can't be in 39, but maybe this is better anyway, because you could be anywhere in the country and hopefully get a bit of a feel for us. We think that you will probably have lots and lots of questions, so please do use the Q&A tab at the bottom. You'll all know where that is, and ask us lots of questions. I'll try and answer some of them as we're going through. If not, as you can see, we've got a bit of a question and answer session at the end. And if we don't get to them or we can't ask them, answer them in a time, then we'll come back to you afterwards. So please do ask as many questions. No, there's no such thing as a stupid question. So ask away, questions, suggestions, comments. I'm going to be asking you some questions, and so you can give me your answers on that as well. And one of the questions I'm going to ask you all straight away to be having a think about is whether you think that even post-COVID, this is something we should keep doing, having one of these sort of virtual open days. And if so, if you have any suggestions at any point of people that you'd like to hear from or things that we could cover that we're not covering, please do give it to us, because we'd like to, if we're going to do it again, make it better and more relevant for you. So I'm probably the person you need to hear from least, because you want to hear from all the actual pupils that we've got this year, and former pupils and members and pupil supervisors and head of the pupillage committee. Those are the people you want to hear from. So I'm going to hand over pretty soon. Well, I'm not going to introduce anyone. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. And what I'm going to get them to do also is to say what their journey to the bar was, what their route to pupillage was, and becoming a barrister, because I think that's really interesting. And obviously we are very interested to have people from all different backgrounds, routes, having done lots of different things, or just having gone straight through the normal route. But it's open for everybody, and there's no one right way of getting here, which is important to say. So I think I've covered everything I meant to have covered. Anything else that I haven't covered, guys, that I should have covered? No? No, we're there. Okay, so we're going to go straight to what life is like as a pupil at 39 Essex Chambers. And we've got Gethin. Can you wave, Gethin? You know, just there, Gethin, who was a pupil and is now a member. And we've got Jake and Nyasha, who are our current pupils. Now, I'm not sure which way you're going to take it, but I'm going to hand over to you three. And can I just remind you, can you tell us how you got here, what your route to the bar was? Thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much, Lindsay. So my name's Gethin. I was a pupil at 39 Essex from 2017 to 2018. And before coming to the bar, I did a law undergrad degree as a mature student. I ended up being a mature student because I spent 2 years after I finished school working in a music shop and playing in a garage band. I also did some interrailing around Europe, so completely unrelated to the law. After I finished my law degree, I then spent 2 years working as a research assistant at the Law Commission on law reform projects, then studied the bar course and joined 39 as a pupil. So my 2 or so years since being a tenant at 39 Essex, I've enjoyed a really broad practice across all areas of Chambers specialisms. And as Lindsay said, I'm joined by Nyasha and Jake, who are both current pupils at 39 and will both also explain a little bit about their route to the bar. And we're going to be speaking about life as a pupil at 39 Essex. I mean, in short, my headline of my experience is that 39 is a very warm and supportive place to be a pupil. I think my co-pupils and I are all agreed that we couldn't have asked for a better pupillage experience. Our supervisors were committed to ensuring that we had the best possible training, that they were genuinely invested in helping us to succeed, and ensured that our experience was not too stressful. And they continue to remain incredibly supportive and are extremely generous in their time to advise and to guide us through building our practices. So I'm going to hand over first to Jake to speak about his background, how pupillage is structured, the training that's provided, and how it's assessed.
Hi everyone, I'm Jake. I'm one of the 3 current pupils, and I'm currently in the commercial and construction seat. I'm currently sitting on the 5th floor, and you might see that the sun is kind of beaming onto me as I look down Chancery Lane. It hasn't felt very common in the last couple of weeks that we've had such a beautiful day, but today you can see I've got a wonderful view. In terms of my background, I studied history at university, graduated and was a little bit unclear what I was going to do. Actually, also spent some time working in a music shop. So Gethin, if you want to start a band at any point, then do let me know. And really wasn't quite clear on what my route was going to be. I worked in a think tank for a while. I did a master's. And it was actually a friend's mother who suggested to me that actually I might be quite good at the law, and I'd really not really thought about it. And I thought, okay, I'll run with this. Did a couple of mini pupillages. Really enjoyed it. Found it really stimulating. And the rest is history. I did a law conversion, then the bar course, and here I am. I think first things first, I would say that I've really enjoyed pupillage so far. We started in October. It's obviously been, during that period, quite a strange time to do pupillage. I think that we will always be marked out as the year who did pupillage during the pandemic. So maybe people are being nicer to me as a result. But I think the point is that, you know, if it is been this good during a pandemic, then in normal times I can only imagine how good it is. So it's been a great experience so far. I'm going to touch on a few areas before passing on to Nyasha. First, I'm going to talk about how pupillage is structured here. So we do 4 seats. As I mentioned, commercial and construction, which I'm doing at the moment. Then we have civil liability, which is sort of personal injury, clinical negligence type stuff. Planning and environmental law, and then public law. So kind of a split between the sort of private and public law areas. You spend about 2 months in each seat, and then there's a tenancy decision about sort of 8 months in, roughly. I think one of the quite distinctive things about 39 is that you tend to have 2 supervisors per seat. And I have found that to be a real plus, because you just have a much wider exposure to the ways that different barristers manage their practice, and just how they approach life at the bar. And I've taken a lot from all of my people supervisors so far who have done things quite differently. You also, not just in terms of approach, but also in terms of areas of work. So I think a good example is on my public seat, one of my supervisors, Colin, is with us. I had one supervisor who was very much claimant oriented, and then another who was very government respondent oriented, and actually getting exposure to both of those sides of the coin, I think was really, really useful, and I hope and think will make me a better barrister for that. So I think that's one thing to bear in mind that is different at 39, and I think is a real plus. Another thing is, as you might well be aware, is that because we cover such a broad range of areas at 39, you really do get an exposure to a wide range of work. And for me, that was one of the real things that attracted me to 39, because I felt like I would be able to see lots of different types of work and get a real sense as to what types of work excited me. And I think that all of the pupils this year have come in and been surprised at liking areas of work that you may not have thought when you first arrived. So I think that's a real plus as well. And also, one of the things I've picked up from being here is that I think it's important not to think of the areas as kind of completely separate from one another. And practicing in a few different areas can lead to quite exciting crossover work. A really good example, someone who's somewhat further ahead of me, is Kate Grange, QC, had a practice in both construction and public law. And she has said that that was one of the main things that led to her doing Grenfell. And so that's a really strong part of Chambers that has really excited me by being here. I'm conscious that I don't want to take up everyone else's time, so I'm going to move on. I've also been asked to talk about what training we get. I think that it's good to split this into two, the sort of training with supervisors, and then there's a sort of formal training program that Chambers runs. So with supervisors, I found my supervisors to be really attentive, and they really work hard to make sure that you cover the most important areas of work. So I've done advices, I've done pleadings, I've made sure that I'm going to be going to different types of hearings. And once you've handed in a piece of work, I've found I get very detailed feedback with sort of quite clear areas on how to improve. Another nice thing is that although supervisors are quite keen to make sure that you're not being kind of farmed out and people aren't putting on work on your plate without that being kind of monitored, supervisors are quite very good at making sure that you aren't being asked to do things that they aren't aware of. But they are really keen to make sure that you meet different people in Chambers. So I've been able to go to hearings with quite senior silks here, and that's also been really excellent to get a sense of the different types of work that people are doing at different stages of their career. So that's the sort of supervisor type training. Chambers has also put a lot of effort into a sort of formal training program. So we have, I think it's about 11 or 12 sessions covering all sorts of different areas. And what I've liked about that is that it's a mix between the sort of skills you need as a barrister, so your sort of advocacy type stuff, how to kind of deal with certain hearings, the dreaded ethics type issues that we had a session on last night that was really helpful, but also a kind of wider program about how can you have a fulfilling and, I suppose, good career at the bar. So we've done things like accountancy, how to manage your practice, how to work well with clerks, and also a session on well-being. And I suppose as a slight tangent, I've been really impressed by the emphasis on well-being at Chambers. I don't think it is the case at a lot of Chambers, but it is not a sort of taboo subject here, that that well-being is important and is something that has to be carefully managed. So that's been very much appreciated. Okay, finally, I've been asked to talk about how we are assessed in our pupillage. My experience so far has it's been very above board. We've been constantly told, well, not every single day, but it's been reiterated
every other day.
Every other day, exactly. Yeah, 3 times a week. That there shouldn't be any surprises. You know, we should have a sense of where we're at. You know, the tenancy decision isn't a decision taken in a kind of dusty room somewhere in the depths of chambers that you have kind of no idea who said what. We are kind of given regular feedback as to how we're doing. That feedback takes the form of reports from our supervisors. So in each seat, we get a half-time report, which is, I think, more about sort of feedback and kind of pointers for how to improve, so that by the end of the seat, you can meet the required standard. And then at the end of the seat, you get a final report where you are assessed against Chambers 6 competencies. Those competencies are, you might have seen them on the website, so I'll just whip through them really quickly. Intellectual ability, expressive ability, both written and oral, interpersonal skills, commitment, drive, and efficiency, interests in one or more areas of law in which Chambers specialises, and then interests outside the law. And I would really, I mean, they're all important, but I would really emphasise the last one. I think is important, because that is an important part of Chambers. You know, we are encouraged to have lives outside of pupillage and outside of our lives as barristers. So I would encourage everyone on the call to also take that mindset to the bar. Okay, so those reports go to the pupillage, shadow pupillage panel. We also do a few bits of work directly for the pupillage panel, as well as an advocacy assessment. And then at the end, this is all kind of put together for the tenancy decision. I'll just finish and say that, as I said, to emphasize that there's been a real emphasis on transparency. I think that there's an awareness that it is a stressful process in some ways, and Chambers really wants to do its best to minimize that. We've also been told that if we meet the standard, there's space for all of the pupils. And I think that's really important, because there's not a sense of competition between us in a way that, you know, if there's a place that takes 4 pupils, but they only are ever going to take 2 tenants, I think it can be more difficult. I've probably gone on a little bit too long, but I hope that that's covered my areas. And I think I'm now passing on to Nyasha.
Well, thank you, Jake. Oh, sorry, Lindsay, did you want to come in?
I was just going to say thank you to Jake. Thanks, Jake.
Well, brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Jake. And also, I think that was pretty comprehensive. So I'll try and cover a bit about my own background and just some additional thoughts on my experience. So I did an undergraduate in human sciences, so a lot of evolutionary anthropology, seeming a very long way away from law. And I did the GDL back in 2013. And at the time, I didn't quite feel, even though I knew that I, at some level, wanted to try to go to the bar at some point, that I was ready, that I'd had enough kind of diverse experiences. And so I took a very circuitous route to getting here today. And that took me briefly to sustainable building in Argentina and Brazil, to America for a master's, and for a period I worked in the public sector. So I both worked in politics, but I was also a civil servant. And I completed my bar course part-time. As a result of that somewhat winding road to the bar, I've started slightly later than the other pupils. I have not found that that has kind of made any difference at all to my experience at 39 Essex. What's been quite nice about it is that I've had other experiences that I can bring to being here today. But what's really nice is that Chambers understands that people come from a range of different places and just does an excellent job of accommodating where you're kind of coming from and what skills you need that they need to ensure that you acquire over the course of pupillage year to make sure that you get up to the required standard of a tenant, because that's what they really want you to achieve. So a few points that Jake hasn't yet covered that I thought it'd be worthwhile explaining include the working hours. So 39 Essex takes the approach that we should all be working between the hours of 9 and 6 each day. Now that's kind of a really good way of making sure that you have your evenings to restore, to reflect, to think about things, but also that you're not ending up exhausting yourself over the period of your pupillage. As many people have told me over the course of this year, both pupillage, but also the bar as a whole is a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to be able to create working kind of arrangements that allow you to have a normal life, that allow you to be able to sustain high quality work. The other part of that is that it requires, and I think I've learned a lot about how to be efficient in approaching my work so that I'm not ending up down rabbit holes, but how to also kind of understand what a good job requires and not ending up kind of getting flustered and stressed late into the evenings when really what I actually need to do is have dinner and see friends and family and then come back the next day refreshed. So that's been a really good part of pupillage. Another aspect of being in Chambers is that alongside your supervisors, you get the chance for encounters with other members of Chambers. So those can range from the kind of tea area, water cooler moments where they tell you a little bit about their trial that they've just come out of, to having the opportunity to work with other members of Chambers. I was lucky enough in my first seat to be able to work with Paul Darling QC on a case that was at the Supreme Court. And to within kind of a month of having started, already being at the Supreme Court was an exceptional opportunity that I was really glad to have. To reiterate something else that Jake said, because the atmosphere that is created is incredibly supportive, it puts us in a position where we really, and I hope it would have been the same at any Chambers, but we can have a really nice relationship with our other pupils. So Jake and Eleanor and I think are all fundamentally and profoundly disappointed that we can't spend more time or any time at all in the pub together. But we've been on WhatsApp threads, we've gone out for dinner when that was legal and possible. And it's just been a really kind of warm and nurturing relationship between the three of us so that we can all overcome kind of all of the challenges of getting up to the standard of becoming a barrister. And then finally, I think the last point to make is just that we get exposure to a huge amount of different types of work, and that puts us into a brilliant position for when we actually finally get on our feet and go into court. And I'm going to now segue across to Gethin, because we're still in our first 6 portion of the pupillage. So we're with supervisors, we're going to different court cases, trials with them, we're doing work alongside, but we haven't yet begun second 6. So Gethin, if I can pass back to you to explain exactly what that's like, that would be great.
Oh, there's always
Thanks,
one.
Manisha. Yeah, I was going to be the first person to do that. 39 does have a practice in second 6, which means that in the second half of your pupillage, as pupils, you get to get on your feet and go to court. Now, it's a great thing because I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get into court. It's extremely valuable advocacy experience. The majority of cases that you'll be instructed in during the second 6 are generally low value civil liability claims, including, for example, whiplash injury claims or damages for the cost of car repair arising from road traffic accidents or slip and trip claims. In many cases will be full trials with disputes about whether or not the defendant is liable for the accident. If so, what's the amount of compensation? Some cases are purely disputes about the amount of compensation, but the trials of those kind will usually involve cross-examination of witnesses, so you get to put all your advocacy training into real life practice with real life witnesses. You may also occasionally be instructed to work on other types of hearings, such as applications, which require submission-based advocacy rather than witness handling, which you may be more familiar with if you've done a bit of mooting. I remember one of my more memorable second six cases was an application hearing in which I was acting for a local authority who dealing with a claim that had been brought by someone that said that they were responsible for the faulty street lamp that resulted in a car ploughing into his car on New Year's Eve. During your second six, your workload in the practicing portion is very carefully managed. So you can expect to get to court once or twice a week, but you still have the opportunity to continue to do work for your supervisor. The balance is really well struck. And as Jake has already mentioned, before you get on your feet, you'll have a number of training sessions from junior members for whom this is all still very fresh, including general sessions on getting into court, particular types of cases you're like to be instructed in, and as Jake mentioned, ethics. You're also generally very well supported. There's always someone to speak to. I remember running my first cases past junior tenants. So the second six is a very enjoyable time and experience. I'm now going to hand over to Ruth, I think, who's going to speak about life as a junior tenant.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much. And so questions are coming in. Thank you very much. Keep them coming in. And some people are answering them as we go. So thank you very much. If any of the panel can answer as you go, please do that. Otherwise, we'll pick them up either as we're going through or, as I said, at the end. And if we don't manage it at the end, we will come back to you all in some way or other as quickly as we can. So Ruth, when you're going through, could you just also pick up on what does the advocacy assessment consist of? Because just very briefly, because that's a question that's come up a couple of times.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I'll give just an overview of my background and then bring back those memories of the advocacy assessment. So first, in terms of my background, I'm about 2.5 years now post pupillage. I did have to do an actual calculation of that because I think time has lost some of its linear fashion in the last year, but it is 2.5 years. In terms of my background before that, I studied law in Trinity in Dublin. I then worked at a technology company, working in conferences after that. And that was when I heard about the bar. I didn't know any barristers growing up or have anyone who I could ask questions of, but I did hear about the London bar in particular how chambers are structured. And that really appealed to me. So while I was working in that technology company, I then applied for the bar course. I came over, did the bar course, applied for pupillage at 39. And then before I started my pupillage, I worked at the Law Commission as a research assistant, and then did my pupillage and worked as a judicial assistant for a year after that as well. So a bit of a kind of whistle-stop tour bringing me up to tenancy where I am now. And in terms of my pupillage, Gethin is there. He was one of my co-pupils and James was my other co-pupil, and we're still really good friends. So it does show how important that relationship is with your co-pupils. One thing that struck me, and it's relevant, Lindsay, to the advocacy assessment question, it's something when I look at Jake and Nyasha and Eleanor as well, who's a pupil who's not on the Zoom today, we're very much not in competition with each other as pupils at 39. I know I hope that that's like that in all chambers, but certainly in terms of pupillage at 39, we're not in competition, and that very much then carries into tenancy.
And just jumping in on that, and in answer to one of the questions, which actually quite a lot of you might be interested in, it was what was the rate of sort of, how many tenants did we take from pupils? And in the last 5 years, it's 90%, which I think is pretty strong. So yeah, 90%. Sorry, Ruth.
Exactly, Lindsay. And I think that's a really good reflection of the fact that you're not in competition with each other. Chambers very much takes pupils on with the intention that everyone will stay on if possible. And that also then feeds into the atmosphere and the advocacy assessment. So I was against James, my co-pupil in it. From memory, it was an application about evidence that we were both doing in front of a senior member of Chambers. And then afterwards, of course you're tense doing the advocacy assessment. But the benefit of the relationship you have with your co-pupils is that afterwards I could go out of the room and say to James, oh God, how did I do? I made that mistake. And he said, no, you are great. And I said, no, you are great. And there really wasn't an atmosphere of it being competitive between us, which I think says a lot about Chambers and also the relationship that you have with your fellow co-pupils. A question to carry on from Jake and Nyasha's insights on what pupillage is like, and it's something we've had in a Q&A question. is, let's say, the kind of work you might be doing as a junior tenant if you were doing public law. So something that you'll see with a lot of junior tenants at 39 is that there will be a mix and variety in terms of the practice areas. So for myself, I have a mix at the moment between commercial, public and environmental law, and my practice very much reflects that. And there probably isn't a better way of giving you an insight into that than giving you an overview of what my last few weeks have been like. So in terms of court, I'm principally in court once or twice a week. Obviously, with the current pandemic, that has changed slightly, and I am conducting hearings from my home. In former times, when I was in Jake and Yash's position as a pupil, I used to go around to all the towns where I had my hearings, and I'd make a point of going to the local bakery to kind of have a hit list of who did the best cake. So I think Jake and Yash won't be able to do that probably over I can see Yash there looks particularly devastated by that over the next few months, but we'll make up for it afterwards, no doubt. But obviously now, of course, still 1 to 2 hearings a week. Those hearings generally are unled, which means you're conducting your own cases. Sometimes the solicitor will ask you to give advice, which is nice. And you very much feel like you're in control of the ship, which I think is a lot of what attracts people to the bar. Sometimes those could be hearings, you could be doing an injunction, a strikeout. Sometimes you'll be doing a trial that'll last a day or might go on a bit longer. So that really does add to the variety of work. In terms of the work around that, of course, sometimes you're working on longer cases. So 2 of the longer things that I've been working on for the last year or so, one of them is a construction dispute where I'm a junior with 3 other people in chambers. And so you're working with other people in chambers, which is nice, but you'll also ultimately have ownership over your own work. So you could be doing witness statements or looking at expert reports or helping with pleadings. And then in terms of the variety around that, then I'm also on the Grenfell inquiry as a junior. And I think that also reflects something Jake said, which I think is absolutely right, is that you do 4 seats, and of course they're all separate seats. But I think the benefit of that is not only that if you're interested in a different practice area, you can explore that practice area. I think it's when you go away from it, you see the overlap between different areas of law. And certainly when I'm working on Grenfell, you see that overlap and you see the benefit of doing a seat in construction and commercial. And you then see the benefit of the fact you also did a seat in public law as well. And then finally, in terms of shorter term projects around that, for the last 2 weeks, I was a junior working on a judicial review with someone else in chambers, responding to a letter which is very much focused around some of the legal issues which are thrown up around coronavirus. So again, you get to have that pace in your practice, which is certainly something which attracted me, of thinking you want to work on long-term cases where you can really dive into the detail and understand it. But I think you also want that excitement of going into court and cross-examining someone and giving your closing speech and all of those kinds of things. Certainly looking back at it now, I think you can really see the benefit of things like a practicing second six and doing your own cross-examination. Of course, that gives you a confidence when you go into court and your cases get, more and more valuable, let's say. It gives you that confidence. But I also think it's important when you're a junior, if you're helping a leader with cross-examination, and it might be the most glamorous trial, but fundamentally human beings are all the same, and it doesn't really matter how big the trial is. Some of those features of human behavior are the same. So it's certainly hugely beneficial. So Lindsay, that's just kind of a quick whistle-stop tour of practice at the junior end and what it's like. I'll also be responding to some of the Q&A because I see there's some particular questions. But we also have Hannah and Sheraton who are going to give even more of an insight. I remember once actually in my second six, Hannah came with me to court. She's my clerk, and someone asked Hannah, what's the role of a clerk? And Hannah was standing beside me and she said, I kind of think the role of a clerk is a bit like a football manager. And I was like, okay, that gives us a glamorous duo sense here. So Hannah can give a better sense than anyone of how to craft life at the junior bar as well. That's great.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ruth.
Lindsay.
I'm just going to have to drop off now because she's actually got a hearing. So some of the presenters who aren't here the whole time, that's what they're doing. They're in hearings or they're, and they're trying to fit it in between lunch breaks and that kind of thing. So thanks, Ruth. If you can make it back for the questions, that'd be great. But that was
Brilliant.
Really brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Eleanor, who is our third pupil this year, is at the moment with her 2 pupil supervisors. So she's got 2 pupil supervisors, and they're both on the same case. And she's in an in-person public inquiry at Stansted Airport, and that's where she is this afternoon. And she's been there all week, so that's why she wasn't able to join us. And that just gives you an indication of what she's seeing at the moment. Just very quickly, a couple of people didn't hear what the 4 seats were. So just to remind you all, They are public law, civil liability, that's sort of like PI, Cloneg, insurance, commercial and construction, and the fourth one, property, environment and planning. And the other questions that are coming up quite a lot are, can you choose your seats? No, you do one, they're set. You do one, either 4 seats, and you do seats in each of those. And if you do have life experience or a particular interest in one seat, that's great, but no, you've got to do all 4 of the seats, and you can't just do 1 seat. So that just to answer some of the questions. And now I'm going to go to Shez and Hannah. Introduce yourselves. Tell us what you do here. Tell us how you got to the bar. Shez, tell us how long you've been here for. Also, there was a question come through about public law work for juniors. What kind of public law work would they get? That'd be great if you could answer that, Shez. And also whether juniors get to do any court of protection work. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, my name's Sheraton. I'm one of the senior practice managers in the public law group. I've been clerking in Chambers for a whopping 20 years now. Makes me feel incredibly old, but it also means that I can honestly vouch for the fact this is a jolly nice place to work. As you can see from the agenda, myself and Hannah are going to be covering what to expect from your second six, hearings going into your diary, etc., and also what to expect from the early years. I'm now going to pass over to Hannah. Hannah's been here for 4 years. She's one of the practice managers in the civil liability group and is an integral part, as you've heard previously, on the pupillage side of things in Chambers. So I'll hand you over to Hannah now.
Many thanks, Shez. So yeah, I'm Hannah. I am one of the practice managers here within Chambers, and also sort of predominantly look after pupillage. So when the pupils, so my route to the bar was slightly unusual, if I'm honest. I went to uni, didn't really like it, and then kind of ended up in Chambers. I've been clerking just over 6 years, and I've also recently graduated with a first-class business management degree, which I think is going to be really useful. That was very recent, it's still very exciting. So we are talking about sort of the clerking side and everything else that's great about Chambers. So first and foremost, something that hasn't actually been mentioned yet is the fact that when you join, you get a buddy, both a practice manager, which is normally myself and one of my colleagues, Jamie, this year, and also a junior tenant buddy. So I think Jake and Eleanor's, I think is Ruth and Gethin, actually, funnily enough. So yeah, sort of a junior tenant that they can have sort of totally off the record discussions with, answer questions and anything else they need, really. So moving on to a bit more of what we are talking about, something that has already been mentioned and is a real advantage, I think, to 39 pupils is the fact that second six is practicing, meaning you get to take your cases on in your own right. As has been previously mentioned, they're mainly sort of small claims, so road traffic accidents, slips and trips, property damage. What I would say, and has been mentioned in some of the Q&A questions, although there is personal injury, don't be put off by that if your interests are elsewhere. They are really, really useful hearings in terms of developing your ability to cross-examine, answer questions, and anything else. And frankly, as Ruth said, find some really nice bakeries throughout the country. So yeah, getting to court really allows you to be on your feet and also to get in touch with ushers, opponents, other pupils, and anything else. Although this may sound a really daunting prospect to be on your feet at the start of second six, we've got a really good training programme, including sort of mock trials heard with sort of other junior tenants before they go. So really sort of getting you nice and engaged beforehand. So practicing is alongside work with your pupil master. So you're also sort of attending court, etc. with them. Which haven't been mentioned and probably is worth mentioning is you keep all of your fees you'll make with these small hearings as well. So a nice little bit extra to add to your pupillage award. I typically in the 6 months would allow sort of 25 to 30 cases that you'll be doing, sort of 2 max per week. So in second six, it's not all hard work though. We've got a really nice social side within Chambers, and we try and organise a sort of a social meet between the pupils and the clerks. If normally we go bowling or something else quite exciting. I'm just planning this year's one. We might do sort of murder mystery or something like that by Zoom. In the current climate, we try and do what we can do. But yeah, in my opinion, and I'm sure Shez would agree on this, it's a really open and honest chambers, and frankly, we are here just to help you succeed. So if you've got any questions, feel free to sort of get in touch. And also, yeah, one of my biggest tips is ensuring good communications with your clerks when, and if you have pupillage with us. I'll pass you over to Shez to talk about the early years.
Thanks, Hannah. I hope that was really useful to all of you guys. Okay, so moving on now to the early years. You've been taken on as a tenant. Yay, well done you. The mentoring and support will 100% continue. The buddy that you've had throughout will continue on into your early years in Chambers as well. They've just been through it themselves. So, you know, any guidance and reassurance that is needed will continue to be there across the board. You will continue to be instructed on the matters that Hannah has sat out to you already just a moment ago. And now that you are a tenant, you will have a much wider range of the opportunities to become involved in the breadth of practice areas that we cover here at 39. Some examples of that will be that junior tenants are often called upon to consider taking on mini secondment roles. The length of that can vary, but ordinarily nowadays we would suggest something between 1 to 2 days a week, so that you've still got time to do the court work and paperwork, etc. around of that. The sort of secondments that we've go through previously in Chambers have been for sort of local authorities, covering a range of mainly sort of public, planning, environmental and commercial. We also have a massive regulatory team in Chambers, so there's lots of opportunities with regulators as well to help them ad hocly.
Yes, I'm just going to jump in there, sorry. One of the questions that we've had is about international work, and we also have a secondment that we've had quite often, which is in Singapore with a very big multinational law firm in Singapore, and quite a lot of our members have done that, and that was a 6-month secondment. And so yes, it is possible to go travel internationally on our work, and a lot of our work is international. So just to jump in, we have, if you haven't seen, we've got an office in Kuala Lumpur, and we have an office in Singapore, and we have barristers based there, and a lot of our work is international, and therefore when we're not in COVID times, it involves international travel. At the moment, it involves sitting in our 5th floor at all through the night while you're doing hearings in time zones that you'd rather not be. But anyway, that just to answer that question. Shez, sorry.
That's fine, that's fine. So I was just touching on the different secondments that we've done. We've also done them for the likes of Ofgem, the Electoral Commission, the Bank of England as well, of some of them that we can mention to you. A very regular one that we've had actually from 2013 is for the Financial Ombudsman Service, and that's still continuing at the moment. The next part was to touch on the fact that we have had the rolling secondments overseas as well, which is not obviously working as well at the moment. But I mean, generally, you get a feel here for how important these secondments are. You know, you get the opportunity to sit there with clients day in, day out. You get to understand how they work, the type of sectors they're working in, the particular area of law. And of course, you're doing the most important thing, which is you're starting to develop a relationship with these clients, which obviously is key. And the thing is nowadays as well, from our perspective as clerks, you know, it's a given that you're all extremely bright as barristers, but they want to know what sort of person they're going to be working with. So these secondments are absolutely fantastic opportunities to achieve this. Another highlight of coming to 39 in those early years is that you do get the chance to work with some of the most preeminent silks and senior juniors at the bar, getting exposure to be involved in very high profile, interesting and important cases that we have. We've got a lot of public inquiry work, which was slightly touched on earlier, and we're hugely proud of the fact that we've got lead counsel to the Grenfell inquiry and also the infected blood inquiry. So this means we've got massive teams in Chambers that are working on both of them, and this will start from the junior end. Another thing to mention, I actually re-looked at this today, and we actually have 27 members in Chambers who are on the government legal department panel. So this is the Attorney General's panel. Now, you can't apply to be on the C panel until you are 3 years cool, but before then you could join the junior scheme, which we take care of for you, which then means if one of the panelists in Chambers or the silks in Chambers who are working with GLD need a junior on the case, we can bring you in on that. And also GLD can call us and say that they will need somebody to bring in on a case. You get exposure to more clients at GLD, but also to people in other chambers as well, which is always a good thing. We'll also sit down with you and do this across the board with the barristers in chambers. We have practice review meetings with the clerks sitting there with you as well. Ideally every 6 months, we just look at how things are going, areas you want to develop, aspirational side of things that you're looking for, any concerns you have, any conversations that you've had with clients you think it's useful for us to be aware of. And just again, like Hannah touched on earlier, communicating all the time with each other so we're all on the same page. If we was living in the normal sense of the world, which unfortunately we're not at the moment, there would be lots of social opportunities on the business development side of things, even in your younger years. We've got a huge seminar program that we used to put on. We've got brilliant, conference suites upstairs where we can hold up to 105 people in those rooms. Obviously, we're very far away from that at the moment, but it just gives you an idea of the capabilities that we have here. We actively encourage, the juniors to attend, learn while they're, at the seminars, and then we do drinks for clients afterwards where, again, we will encourage you to come along, mingle with the clients, and also chat with the members as well. As you can imagine, we are a very large set of chambers, but it is still really important and part of chambers culture to make sure there are lots of opportunities to socialise together. Obviously, that's difficult at the moment in some ways, but normally in term time, there would be a chambers lunch where every other Friday, some of the members of chambers would extremely kindly pay for lunch for everyone, and we'd be upstairs in conference rooms, chatting in a social setting together. We also have lunch in the clerks, drinks in the clerks room every Friday. We don't care whether it's term time or not. And that takes place. And that's a really nice thing that we do as well, just to make sure that everybody's keeping in contact with each other and just catching up on a social level. We have still been doing that regardless. We've had virtual drinks as well. So where the groups get together and catch up with people. So the pastoral side of things is, everybody is very well looked after here. I don't think there's too much for us to say on this subject, but just sort of reassure you again, which you've heard time and time again from people before me, that we do appreciate how daunting the pupillage experience can be for some, but chambers really are excellent at supporting you across the board. We have a huge clerking team, we have a huge staff team, that it's a really, really nurturing environment. So it's a really great place to progress yourself at the bar. I don't think there's anything else. Hannah, did I miss anything?
Don't think so.
No, I think that's it.
Thanks, Shez. Thanks, Hannah. That's really, really good. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass straight over to Charlie and Rachel. I'm not sure if Rachel's on. Oh, she is. I can see her. Hi, Rachel. So I know you've been in a hearing, so thanks very much for making it. Charlie, Rachel, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm going to kick off. We're just going to cover some stuff about chambers ethos and what it's like as a place to work, and then Charlie.
Rachel,
yes.
You might have missed this, sorry. What I'm asking everyone to do is just give us a very, very quick, how did you get to the bar?
I did miss that.
What was your route to the bar? Because, we're just trying to make sure that whether you come straight from university and, law school and then straight to pupillage, great. But if you've done other things, also great. And there's all sorts of different ways, and no way is more important and no way is right. But I just thought it might be helpful to know. So that'd be great. Thanks, Rachel.
Well, I came to the bar sort of by accident. I didn't do law as a first degree. I did English, and I thought I was going to become an academic. And then I had a bad breakup and decided I really didn't want to do a PhD in medieval manuscripts and how they're put together, because it wasn't particularly socially useful, although I still think it was interesting. And so I decided I would do the law conversion and see how that went, and then drifted into mooting and things like that, and decided that seemed fun and I'd see if I could get a job as a barrister, and then went from there, really. I did 2 rounds of pupillage applications. In my first round, I didn't bother applying to 39 because they'd rejected me from mini pupillage, so I thought I had no chance. So somebody was asking, if you get rejected, does that affect your chances next time? No, and please don't be disheartened if you do get rejected at mini pupillage stage or subsequently. give it a go next time. You never know, luck might be on your side. It certainly was on mine the second time round. In terms of what 39 is like as a place to work, I've been here for, like Ruth, I had to count this on my fingers because time seems to have lost all meaning. I'm now in my 4th year of practice, so I did pupillage in 2016-17, and I've been at 39 ever since. I have a mostly public law and quarter protection practice, but I do a bit of planning too, with greater or less success. I think that's quite standard for people at my sort of level at 39. Most people have fairly, still quite mixed, but beginning specialised practices. All in all, I'd say it's a really great place to be and to work. It's quite difficult. I remember applying for pupillage and noting that all of the sets said that they were friendly and approachable, and it's just impossible to know what that actually means without being able to go there and get a bit of a feel for them, because people seem to mean wildly different things by it. 39 is genuinely friendly and approachable, and we all like each other. You've heard Shez was talking about drinks, Friday drinks, which we used to have, and we've kept up virtual drinks. We have lunches, or had lunches, and we're doing what we can to try and keep things as normal as possible in these pandemic times. We now have a Chambers WhatsApp group, and also spin-off WhatsApp groups, including the baking specialist WhatsApp group and junior female members of Chambers who run WhatsApp groups, so specialised interests. There's an open door policy, so one of the really nice things is how prepared people are to give you their time and their expertise. If you just wander around the corridors or drop someone an email and say, I've come across this in one of my cases and I don't really understand, is anyone available just to chat to me about it, to walk me through it? Always somebody will make themselves available, and it's a great way of learning, and it really speaks to the nature of Chambers and sort of atmosphere here. I strongly recommend it. It's a great place to be. There's been some questions about equality and diversity, which I've been asked if I can pick up on, because I am one of Chambers Equality and Diversity Officers. Obviously, this is an issue which we're all very aware of, and which we've given quite a lot of thought to, especially since last year and the BLM movement. I've posted a link in response to one of the questions about Chambers Equality and Diversity, and the
Jonathan, hi, it's Emily Formby here. Could you give me a ring when you get a chance? Thank you.
Emily.
It's what Emily had something to say there. About
Emily is one of the chairs of our pupillage committee. Emily, you are not on mute, so if you could mute yourself, that'd be great, because just in case you're talking to a client, that's probably not good from a GDPR point of view.
Yes, sorry. So the Equality and Diversity page on the website has some of the information about some of the schemes that we're involved with. So Bridging the Bar, which was set up last year, which I suspect many of the people on this webinar will know about already. We're one of the chambers partnering with them, and we're looking to see what we can do to provide opportunities and support to them at the moment. We're also partnering with the Sutton Trust, because in addition to race, we've identified socioeconomic disadvantage as being one of the areas that we think could do with more work in terms of getting people into Chambers. There's a link on that page as well to our Equality and Diversity survey from last year, which has some information about diversity within Chambers, so breakdown of practitioners by race, various characteristics. I think we've got socioeconomic data in there too. It's not a complete set of statistics, because where a respondent group has less than, I think, 10 individuals, we keep them out because of identity, the risk that you can identify people. So I think, for instance, disability data might not be publicly available there, but we are obviously aware of issues, even if we don't have a breakdown available there. I think someone asked about learning difficulties and what we would do in terms of making reasonable adjustments. We're obviously, as you would hope, fully aware of the duty to make reasonable adjustments, and as and when that arises, we do what's necessary. I'm not going to say it's perfect because it's not, but I think as a set, it's a set full of people who are aware of these issues and the role that we all play and our own privileges, and that there's work to be done. We're committed to doing that and to making 39 the best it can be and the most accessible and open it can be to everyone. Charlie, I think, is going to pick up now on some more detailed bits of information about practice areas and recent cases and things like that. I'll try and stay online, but I'm in the middle of a hearing, so I have to go fairly soon. But I hope that's been helpful.
Really helpful, Rachel. Thanks very much indeed, and good luck with your hearing.
Thanks. I'm like the 17th.
All of us are behind you. All of us are behind you, pushing
Day
you
3,
forward.
pro bono.
Friday afternoon hearing. That's the pits.
And I'm not even being.
Pro bono, Rachel. Well done.
You definitely get a drink tonight.
It's all Vikram's fault. I should have known when Vikram asked me if I was free that something pro bono and difficult was
on a Friday afternoon. Definitely a bad idea. Thanks, Rachel. Charlie, over to you.
Thank you. I will tell you a tiny bit about myself in a moment, but first of all, I would like just to add something to what Rachel's just said about equality and diversity. It's very easy for people like me to sit here echoing what the sort of thing that Rachel has just said about our chambers. It's obviously necessary that that is the way we should be expressing ourselves. But I really want to try to get across that is the way we feel. We are committed as a Chambers, and I speak as a member of Chambers as well as one of the joint heads of Chambers. We are committed to getting this right, and we will. But we are listening as we have to in order to ensure that that is so. Right, I'm Charlie Corey-Wright. I've been at the bar since 1984, far too long. I too didn't do a law degree. I did an English degree, like Rachel, and then I moved across because a friend of mine had suggested that a career at the bar would work for me, and I've been very lucky. I started out as a pupil in these chambers, funnily enough, having got under my belt work as a bouncer in a nightclub and as a blues singer. I don't do much bouncing in nightclubs anymore. I still do sing blues. I got a place in these chambers at a time when they were much, much smaller. I didn't get taken on by these chambers. I didn't get taken on by my second six. In those days, people did 2 lots of 6 months pupillage by and large. I got rejected by both. I got taken on a third 6 chambers and then a twitch upon the thread, and I came back to these chambers after 4 years, and I've been here ever since. And it's been fantastic to have such a diverse set of practice areas to work in. I'll come back to that in a moment. But raw data about chambers, we've got 146 members, 48 of those are silks. There are approximately 36 members of staff. We have 47 arbitrators, although they're not all full-time. We have 3 academic associates. We're ranked in 20 areas as a leading set. We do domestic work and international work, and there's a wide spread of the latter with offices in Malaysia and Singapore. Jake, I think, was the first person to mention our 4 practice areas, planning and environment, public law, civil liability, which is private law damages claims, and commercial and construction. Someone's asked a question about our ethos in chambers, and that ethos in that is a slightly movable feast in terms of precisely what's meant. But we would say, and I think we would be accurate when we said, it's client care driven, our ethos. It's team working. cross-selling, and that's hugely important in the context of the range of practice areas that we do. It's practice diversity with individuals. It's a work-life balance, and that's already been touched on and pleasingly has been touched on by our pupils. And I promise you, we haven't either bribed or threatened them in order to get them to say that. It's genuinely so. We want to be caring, to be respectful, courteous, and we want to respect equality of opportunities. Innovation, we are professionally run, and we have a public service ethos. Now, the longer that rather odd paragraph went, the more it sounded like a useful soundbite. But again, it's genuinely true. We've taken on, as Lindsay said, 90% of our pupils over the last 5 years. That is because we regard it as an expectation that if anyone is doing pupillage with us, they will be good enough to be taken on, and they will be taken on. So we've always, and I say this as someone who used to run pupillage, a selection, and in its administration in Chambers, we've always wanted to take on all our pupils. We've never set it up as a competition between pupils. And that, I think, is reflected in the way Gethin and Ruth and indeed Jake and Asha have referred to the way pupillage works. We've had something like, we always want to take on 3 if we can. It's made a bit more complicated by COVID, but that's still our expectation. Why is it that you, as a cohort of people or as individuals, would be interested in coming to us above any other chambers, which is trying to sell itself to you? Because after all, this is what today's about. There's make no bones about it. We're wanting to give you information about us so you are better informed to make your decisions about where you apply to. My experience starting out, and I am pretty sure it's a common one, and it's still the case for most people, pretty well everyone applying for a pupillage is committed to being a barrister. Many of them will, with any luck, the great majority of them will succeed, but that has got more difficult as time has gone by. I absolutely recognise that. But I would guess that it's still the case, as it was back then, that 80 to 90% of those people applying for pupillage don't have a fixed idea as to what area of pupillage they want to practice in. And even if they do have a fixed idea as to what area they want to practice in, they may find either during pupillage or in the early years of practice that has completely changed. Not because they have changed, but because they're better informed about what is available and what they actually want to do. Because most of us, whether we're law graduates or not, we come to the bar with a very, very limited knowledge of what real life at the bar and the real cases we're going to be doing actually involve. We know the law, but we don't know the much more important stuff, really, which is the real life upon which that law is intruding. So we find that out and we adapt. And that process continues, frankly, not just during pupillage, not just in the early years of tenancy, but right the way through your practice. I have had a practice that has varied hugely as time has gone on. And I'm so pleased about that fact. I'm really lucky. I started off as a private lawyer. I did it when I was in my first chambers, I was doing crime as well as civil. I then became wholly civil. I moved chambers to these chambers, did private law cases up to the point where I was appointed to the Treasury A panel. Then I had to take on public law work, and I ended up as a special advocate in national security cases, acting for those against whom there is secret evidence being brought. If someone had said to me, "Do you want to do that work? Do you think you're going to do that work?" when I started, I probably wouldn't have known how to answer the question. But even if I did know how to answer the question, I wouldn't have known what it was, what the right answer was. So it's an organic process, and everyone coming to the bar needs to keep that particular thing in mind, because otherwise you close off options to yourself, which you shouldn't be doing. So I think that having a range of practice areas, the 4 main civil practice areas which aren't to do with family work, available to you, in pupillage is not only a real advantage, but is a must. And it's for that reason that, in answer to another of the questions that's been asked, we do require everyone to do a seat in one of those 4 areas, even if they are expressing a real commitment to, for example, planning law. We'd say, no, well, you've got to do all the areas we do, and then you see where we go from there. And there's a gradual, some people remain doing a number of areas of practice, others want to specialize, and they do end up specializing, those ones, after about 5 years. But it's a really important thing to keep your options open, to keep your experience as wide as possible, because you carry on learning, and that's the most important aspect of professional learning after you've finished your pupillage is the experience that you have on the job, as it were. So I would commend to all of you a system whereby you do a range of different subject matters. And that's why I would suggest that having a pupillage that's arranged by experts in those areas with supervisors who know what they're doing, both personally and professionally, is an absolute must. And I can't say more than simply to commend Chambers to you on that basis. The sort of things that you might be doing while you're in pupillage, well, you've heard mention of Grenfell. We have a number of people acting in Grenfell, including a number of people on the Inquiry Council team, Kate Grange, Queen's Counsel, QC, Jenny Richards on the Infected Blood Inquiry, and again, a number of others dealing with that. Lord Dyson, you may be aware of, is dealing with the Martin Bashir Princess Di BBC inquiry. The Heathrow third runway case we're involved in, and Fenella Morris, as you may have seen, has got a leading transgender case, which is going through at the moment. That's all on our website as well. So that is amongst the range of things that you might be doing were you to come here, or at least might be seeing, if not doing. That's enough from me, unless there's anything Lindsay thinks I should pick up or anyone else wants to ask.
No, I might come back to, I'll come back to you in the questions, Charlie, if that's all right. So Charlie and Rachel, thank you very much. Really good on ethos and practice areas and picking up on some cases. Colin and Dan. Dan's been, thank you very much, Dan, for making it. I know that you've been in a hearing as well. So Dan, I am just asking people to just give us a very quick, how did you get to the bar? What was your journey? And I'm not sure which one of you is going first, so I'll just say that. But Dan and Colin, both pupil supervisors for a number of years and currently at the moment. So over to you. What are we looking for?
Dan looks most ready. I'm not sure that's true, Colin, but no, I'm happy to go first. So yeah, I'm an example. Perhaps you are too, Colin. I don't know actually, but certainly I'm an example of someone who's come to the bar a bit later on. I'd always planned to come to the bar, but it just took me quite a bit longer than I thought it would. I left university and then worked for a few years in policy, and then I ended up doing postgraduate work in America, which turned into a PhD, and then so took a very long time, as American PhDs do, before coming back finally in 2009 when I was already 31.
Are you actually Dr. Dan then?
I am Dr. Dan, yes, among other things.
That's amazing. We're definitely going to call you that from now on, Dr. Dan.
Yeah, I keep it under my hat most of the time, but yeah. So I mean, I got a PhD, but you know, as we know in Chambers, we've got the full range, haven't we? People who come straight from university through the law school or conversion route, and then into the bar, or indeed someone like me. Or indeed people who've done other professional paths before coming to the bar. So that's me anyway.
Thanks.
Colin?
You handed over before I was really ready for it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, Colin. I was keeping to the brief part of the brief, if you see what I mean.
Yes, well, contrary to appearances, I did not come to the bar late.
My apologies.
I haven't aged as well as Dan has. I knew I wanted to be a barrister from age 10. There were a couple of barriers in the way. I did my schooling outside the English system. English is my second language. I then studied in England. I joined 39 Essex Chambers as a pupil. I think about the same time as Sheraton did. I can't believe it is 20 years. And I would very much echo what Charlie and Sheraton have said. The ethos that was Chambers when I joined, and I think we were 30 odd, has very much stayed the same. I'll give you some examples. Rachel and I have had the great fortune to do an online video curry cooking course in the last year. I've had the chance to experience firsthand Charlie's singing skills, although I would say he's not the most high profile singer on this video call. I let the other one out herself on that, I think. And in terms of what I do public law, I do human rights, I do some environmental law. I spend some time with the support of Chambers at the European Court of Human Rights. I have been a pupil supervisor now for about 7 years. Emily, Kate, and Judith have kindly invited me onto the Pupillage committee. And I also have a mentee in Chambers who I follow and who is very fast catching up with me and has done wonderfully. That is all I have to say about myself. I wonder if, Dan, you want to take a steer on what we expect from our pupils.
Yes, certainly, Colin. I mean, we've got a list, if you like, which is on the face of it fairly common. I mean, in the sense of what you might expect Chambers to be looking for. So we obviously look for diligence. We look for attention to detail. We look for client care. And we look for the ability to build relationships. We look for initiative and we look for problem solving. I mean, those are some of the elements that go towards making a good pupil and therefore ultimately a good barrister. We've got a set of those type of criteria, if you like. But I mean, if you wanted to think about them in a slightly broader sense, they all kind of interlock and they all interrelate in fairly important ways that come together with some of the things that I only caught the tail end of what Charlie was saying, but I imagine that Charlie and Sheraton were talking about in terms of Chambers' ethos. The attention to detail and diligence and the hard work, if you like, if one's thinking about it as a pupil, and even if you're making pupillage applications, for example, often people or prospective pupils get worried about typos in applications or something, and similarly you get that sort of panic that you've got to reread things and make sure there's no errors or whatever in a document. And that goes to the point, really. It's not just attention to detail in relation to the typos that's important, but for us it's an indicator or a signifier of a much more important thing, which we come face to face with as pupil supervisors when we look at how pupils deal with documents, what they draft, what they're looking at, what provisions they're looking at, and the way in which statutory or legislative provisions interact, whether someone has actually looked at all of the regulations, checked the definitions, all of those kinds of things on the one hand, or if it's a primarily fact-based set of papers that one's got to read in great detail to develop the analysis of, how far has the detail been looked into, what aspects might have been missed. So it's not so much the typos, although, as I said, they may be signifiers of something, particularly when we're looking at pupillage applications. It's, as a pupil supervisor, we're looking at a much deeper level, really, about the level of engagement and diligent application to the material, which will reveal itself in the work that we then see. I mean, that was one point I wanted to make in relation to those sort of broad, as I said, generic things we're looking for. The second thing is, if one's thinking in terms of client care, building relationships, being able to get on with people, one of the things that we look for, as Colin will no doubt agree, we look sometimes for outside interests, for example, as a category, and it's one of our categories on our assessment forms and so on. And the reason for that, again, feeds back into this need to build relationships, build clients, relationships, but also build relationships within chambers with your colleagues, and obviously in the wider world. And one interrelationship there, which I don't think prospective pupils always, it might seem a bit abstract. It might be, oh, they want us to be rounded individuals, they want us to be perfect people. But it's not quite that. It's seeing how you as a person in your own, whatever your interests may be, how that can be built into what we need to do as barristers, which is build relationships both with clients, colleagues, sustain relationships, sustain client relationships, bring clients in, become friends, hopefully, and ultimately with many of your clients and many of your both solicitors and lay clients for the longer term, and obviously your friends and fellow barristers within chambers and opponents too. So I mean, that's probably slightly rambling, but I just wanted to sort of bring in two ways of making some of these things a bit more vivid.
Thank you, Daniel. I agree with all of that. And I just noted down a few do's and don'ts, which are much less thematic than Daniel's, but they're very much in that context. So in terms of what we expect from our pupils is we expect to pick you up where you are. In other words, we will see what your drafting is like. We anticipate you will be enthusiastic, you will be intelligent, you will have shown all of that, but we recognize you will be a work in progress when you join us. That means one very important thing is be yourself. We recognize that barristers come in all shapes and sizes. That is more important these days than it has ever been. Recognizing that and recognizing that you bring your own qualities is a very good and very important start. 2, do that within reason. You will have a chance to express yourself later once you've been taken on, but your pupillage is probably not the time to roll your eyes at judges and contradict your pupil supervisor in conference. But I think we all know where the line is on that, but sometimes it's important to bear in mind. 3, there's a couple of very easy wins to bring to your pupillage. Be interested. No matter how fascinating you think my pollution inquest is, do at least pretend that you're into it. That's a good start. And then I think you find you get more out of it. And 4, this is Daniel's point about diligence. There's a couple of very easy things to get right. Turn up on time, bring a pen, bring your materials. When you're in conference, take a note. These are things that shouldn't need saying really, but if you get those little things right, you're very much setting yourself up to succeed. In terms of the work, what we expect from you is that your first piece will show us where you currently are, and we then expect you to learn from us. There will be a time when you will develop your own style, your own ideas, your own expression. When you're our pupil, it's quite a good idea to follow your pupil supervisor's lead, their style, their way of doing things. If you subsequently wish to discard that, so be it, but follow it for the time being. And then linked to that, sometimes pupils try to run before they can walk. So when you get your first pieces, assume that people haven't overlooked the very obvious point that you can answer in one page. Make sure you go through the hoops, humor us, show us that you can do the walking bit, and then there will be a time when you can come and have your input and show your full brilliance afterwards. But for pupillage, part of that is the learning curve. In terms of drive, do assume that you will have enough time to do things in chambers. One of the great innovations that was already in place when I was a pupil here was that we do expect you to go home at 6. We do expect you to have your weekends for yourself. Quite good practice for later life too. And then in terms of your engagement with others, the chances are we will hear about it, how you've interacted with the clerks, how you've interacted with the clients. And it's a good idea there again to be the best you can be, to be polite, to be courteous, to be interested, and to be diligent. In terms of the greater themes, I think the 2 biggest tips I can give is 1, we're looking for people who enjoy being a barrister. Bring yourself into that. Try and get the most out of it. Try and really get into the areas of law and practice that you get shown by your pupil supervisors. And the chances are you will be surprised how interesting, how engaging, how unexpected some of these new areas of law are. And then, and this is very much echoes Hannah's point earlier, An open mind is a great thing when you start at the bar. We do encourage our juniors to be interested in all areas of Chambers law. Some of the areas that I was a bit part player in, I did a bit of employment law, I did some personal injury, which now isn't day-to-day practice for me. But for example, some of the most interesting cases I now get, and some of you may have been reading about the air pollution inquest before Christmas, that came because I kept up my personal injury and environmental law interest. I have now regular cases in the International Labour Office in Geneva, so for the Patent Office in Munich. All of those came because as a pupil and as a junior tenant, I kept up those different areas of work. And if you take one thing only from what I've said, then it's very much Hannah's point about being open-minded to different areas of practice. Thank you.
Colin, can I just, I'll add to that and also echo again what I heard of the tail end of what Charlie was saying. It is very important. It's one of the best aspects of our chambers, and we're very lucky that we've got many more than four or five stellar groups, but 4 or 5 stellar seats that people will experience. We're very lucky in having that range, and I just, going back to my personal experience, Lindsay, for example, coming to Chambers, I had, in retrospect it seems odd, but I had no idea that planning and environment work would be where I end up focusing not all of my practice, but a large amount of it. I had literally no idea that would be the case, and it was the first seat I did. And it was a big surprise, and immediately I loved it. But I enjoyed all of the seats in sequence, and as is quite common, I think, among our pupils, as Charlie said, some of them do specialise after 5 years. But I think most of us, people who've grown up in Chambers, probably have at least more than one practice area. I'd be surprised. I think that is probably right. And certainly, I've got planning, environment, public, energy, there's a whole range, and I've done high-level personal injury, clinical negligence work, etc., and commercial stuff. And I think it is absolutely one of the most important and one of the best parts of 39, and should be commended to everyone. And it's, I suppose, feeding back into to what we look at as people supervisors. We are focused within the seats on the particular seat that the pupil is engaged in and that we're supervising. But it's important and noticed, I think, if people have an interest and an active interest and engagement in the other areas of Chambers' work and the other seats, albeit that one's focused in a particular seat at a given point. So, but yes, as I say, I think we have a lot to recommend ourselves in terms of the breadth and the quality of the work that we do.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, both. I'm hoping Colin certainly is going to be around for some questions after, but I'm not sure about Dan. But you can ask questions of the supervisors. There is two things I would add to that actually, and one was that we do expect you to make mistakes. It's a learning process, and we expect you to make mistakes, maybe just not make them twice. But we expect that. And also to on the sort of following through on the getting the most out of it. As with anything, as with this webinar, the more questions you ask and the more engaged you're in it, you are in it, the more you'll get out of it. And that's the same with pupillage, and that extends to what Sheraton and Hannah were saying about, engage with the staff and Chambers as well, engage with your clerks, engage with your fee team, engage with me. The more you engage with the whole of Chambers, the more you will get out of your pupillage year. And so come and see us often, and we ask our pupils to come in at least once or twice a day and tell us how they're getting on, even at the moment. So moving on, there's been lots of questions on the, thanks very much for all the questions. As I say, no question is a silly question. Thank you very much. There's been lots of questions about the process, and Judith, Rosie and Lely are going to talk to us about the process. So Judith is the joint chair of our pupillage committee, and I don't know which way you're going to go, who's going to go first, so I'm just going to hand it over to you, but this is about how you apply here to 39 Essex.
Well, I think, good afternoon. I think Rosie's going to start, and then I'm going to speak for a little while, and then I'm going to hand over to Lelia. So Rosie, over to you.
Thanks, Judith. Can you all hear me all right?
Yep.
Brilliant. Good afternoon. My name is Rosie Scott, and I am one of the 3 members on the pupillage, mini pupillage committee, I should say. So I have just finished marking 89 mini pupillage application forms. It's all finished. I'm delighted. Although some of them were a true joy to read, and that's what I'll be talking to you a little bit about in a moment. But in accordance with Lindsay's strictures, here is my potted history. I am another one of those who did not do a law degree. I did an ancient and modern history degree, not exactly for the use that would bring to my later life, but because I thought it would be fascinating. And so then I did a GDL and the bar course after that. Following my bar course, I applied for pupillage during the bar course, didn't get anything. So I worked for 18 months with an American law firm that I had come across during one of the moots that I did, the Wilhelm C. Wyss International Arbitration Moot. So I worked for them for a little while, applied for pupillage during that time, and got pupillage for 39. And I started here in 2015, having drawn down part of my pupillage award and spent it going to New Zealand and Australia, which is a brilliant use of the money. So I came here in 2015, and I've caught bits of what people have been saying on here so far, and I agree with everything. It was a lovely place to do pupillage. It couldn't have been friendlier, kinder, more supportive. In fact, I became quite worried during pupillage that I wasn't stressed. All of my colleagues doing pupillage elsewhere were, up till all hours, different people making different demands, competing demands, very challenging, in competition with fellow pupils. I had none of that. I was thoroughly enjoying myself. I left at 6. I had weekends. I've never been to so many plays in all my life during pupillage. It was a really great time. So I thoroughly recommend pupillage here, not least because, as I hope Jake and Nyasha have said, you become pals with your fellow pupils because you're not in competition. If you're good enough, there's space for you here. You don't have to beat your fellows. And just to echo what Lindsay said a moment ago about coming in and talking to the clerks and talking to members of chambers and staff whilst a pupil, that was a really fun part of it. And particularly during my second 6, you come in having just, had a victory in the tiniest of tiny road traffic accident claims. And I was so overexcited that I'd come in and tell all the clerks how I'd done. And they were kind enough to pretend to be interested and smile and laugh with me. So that was great. So that's my sort of potted history and my 2 penneth on how lovely Chambers is. What I'm going to talk to you about now is applications. So my experience is in marking mini pupillage applications, and I've had a go also last year at marking pupillage applications on the paper sift. So we do here a paper sift, and then we have 2 rounds of interviews. So these are my thoughts, having just read large numbers of excellent applications and some from excellent candidates that fell down for really avoidable reasons. So these are my thoughts. Obviously, the starting point is that there is a vast range of human experience that goes into an application form and then comes to us. All of it is valuable. All of it can be relevant. What I am assuming, I'm not going to talk in any length about the basics. You need to spell things correctly. You need to get your grammar right. You need to get the names of chambers correct. All the basics have to be there. And don't laugh at this, because I've just finished reading applications which have such obvious mistakes that you would see even with a red underline in Word. How do you spell achieve? The difference between practice and practice. It's the same as advice and advise. Don't get that wrong if you're coming to the bar. Just check it. And I suggest that you print it out and read it line by line with a piece of paper covering the words below, and you literally that carefully. It's so easy to miss mistakes, and they're just, you don't need that on your application form. You've got a very short time to make an impression, so make it count. So what I've got are 4 kind of themes which seem to me to draw together the various different things that both thrilled me and enormously irritated me as someone marking and reading applications. So the first one is, you're writing it, I'm reading it. Help your reader. When you're writing your application, help me give you all the credit that you deserve for the things that you've written and done. Draw it out for me. So for example, a classic example of this, grades in your education. my advice would be, if you're anything other than, A star to wherever it went, GCSEs or A levels, give us a note of advice, because we might not be familiar with how you got your grades and what that means. So a GPA, for example, I don't know what that means. I have to look it up. It's just very, very useful. To be honest, if any of you are young enough to have GCSE grades with numbers, not letters, I'd even put that in as to which end is good. Is a 1 good, or is it the lowest? I really don't know. So help me out. Significance of scholarships or prizes. If I see a long list of scholarships or prizes or names, or even just one scholarship, I don't know what they're for. I can't give you all the credit that you deserve for being the one person out of 10 million people to get this, for being as you are, if you don't tell me what the criteria are. So I suggest that you, it can be very short, in brackets, put the criteria that led to you getting that scholarship. The Inns of Court, for example, their scholarships have a list of the criteria on their website. Certainly Middle Temples does. And just explain what it is. Otherwise, I might not know what the Sir Thomas Bingham Scholarship is, but it might mean that you're the most articulate, most brilliant pupil your school had ever seen. I can't tell just from the name. Job titles, similarly, I don't know what all the jobs in all the world mean. So tell me, help me to give you the credit you need. The second general theme is a sort of slightly provocatively worded, but bear with me. Why should I care? As a reader, as a marker of your application, why should I care about what you're telling me? What I'm trying to do when marking your application, when reading it, is to see if you're a suitable candidate to come to Chambers for pupillage. So again, help me. Why should I care about the information you're giving me? For example, mini pupillages or marshalling experience. Fine, you've told me you've been to a mini pupillage at X or Y Chambers. That's great. That shows some sort of dedication. But frankly, I don't care whether you watched a trial about this or you read these papers. How does that bit of information help me decide what kind of a candidate you are? So my suggestion is that you draw out what you got from that experience. A mere list of I did this, I saw this, it's not helpful. But for example, I watched a trial and I observed some points about handling vulnerable witnesses, or I saw how my supervisor diffused an angry judge, or the importance of preparation, something, anything. And that also tells me you're putting effort into this application and you're really engaging, you really want this. So that's my thought about that. But my third general point, hit the criteria. We and many other chambers set out our criteria for pupillage and mini pupillage on our website. They aren't secret. So make sure your application hits those criteria. The way we do it is we have an allocation of marks that we can give for each one of the criteria. So if you don't address that criterion, we can't give you the marks. I'm really sorry, but that's how it works. So the biggest one that people miss, or the one that people miss most often in mini pupillage, is the criterion, what interest do you have in Chambers fields? Now, if you don't tell me anything about what you like about the fields that Chambers does, and I appreciate that GDL candidates may not be very familiar with the fields, but you've got to give me something. If you miss it out, how can I give you marks? So I beg you, don't waste that opportunity. And in particular, here's a nice example of drawing all these together. The box by this Chambers, what better opportunity than to tell us, I'm fascinated by me. Now, someone asked us how we demonstrate interest in a particular field. And the answer to that is there are a vast number of all valid cases. You might have written a book, reviewed a book, articles, you could have had personal experience of the law. And the example I gave was Alexandra in Black and White book. She had deeply unfortunate, deeply sad experience of the criminal law herself when her cousin died. Personal experience, anything at all. But what we want is a genuine interest in something that we do. Now, I wrote on my application, I'm interested in these things, but I'm aware I don't know much about the law, having not practiced it before, so I'm open to other things as well. that's fine, but it doesn't get you off the hook of saying anything at all. So give me something. My final point, and you could go on forever about this particular subject, but this is my final suggestion for you. Whatever life experiences you've got at this stage, or whatever skills you have, whatever courses you've taken by this point, this is what you have to work with. There's no time to do anything else before the applications go in. Use everything that you have. Plunder every life experience that you have at your command for ways in which you can show us that you are a candidate that we want to see. And I've seen lots of things, for example, on Twitter about candidates saying, well, I've done this, but it doesn't feel very barristerial. It feels a bit unworthy. Eject that thought from your mind. There is no such thing. If you have worked in a charity shop, if you've worked in Greggs, if you've worked in Asda, if you've worked in Waitrose, whatever you've done, if you've cared for relatives, if you've been a single parent, whatever you've done, if you can extract from that something relevant to the criteria, something that will help your application, that experience is worthy and we want to know about it. In fact, it might make you seem the broader, more well-rounded, more well-adjusted and grounded candidate who we know from our experience will succeed at the bar. So nothing is unworthy. And all you need is to think about it long enough and hard enough to extract that little gem that will help us see you for who you are. So those are my thoughts about applications. And I think Judith is now going to talk about the interviews. And then we also have Layla, who I think Colin meant is the more experienced singer, to talk about the all-important logistics.
Right, thanks, Rosie. So yeah, I'm Judith Ayling. I am joint head of pupillage. So I have responsibility in Chambers with the rest of the committee for pupillage selection and then for running pupillage once you get pupillage and start in Chambers. And just in terms of my background, I come from a comprehensive in Hull. I didn't know any lawyers at all at school. So I went to university and read modern languages. And frankly, I sort of despised all the lawyers because I thought they were all really, really boring. But I didn't know much about what they were doing. And so 10 years, I did 10 years in publishing and then decided that actually I would like to be a lawyer. And so thanks to an in scholarship, I did the GDL at City University and then did the bar course and then did pupillage in Chambers. And I've been in Chambers since 1998. I started off, I did a public law and a common law pupillage and some construction law, which I was very bad at. I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. I have ended up practicing in personal injury and clinical negligence since 1998, but sort of to my own surprise, really, I have now in the last year or so ended up becoming a human rights lawyer by the back door. So that's who I am and what I do. The first thing to say about pupillage selection, so the stage we're at now with the gateway about to close, is try and remember we've given you lots of tips about what to do and what not to do. I think the most helpful advice I was given is that we want you to succeed. So we're not looking to mark you down and be incredibly critical, but you need to give us the information on which to let you succeed. So if you don't tell us that you've done X, Y, or Z, we can't give you marks for it. So that's the first thing I would say, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Secondly, as Rosie said, make sure you proofread your application carefully. If you make a spelling mistake, we all do it. It's not going to mean that you definitely won't get through, but try to read the application form carefully and to make sure that you have not made silly mistakes. I include amongst silly mistakes not getting the right chambers when you talk about why you want to come to us. Every year there are forms which say, I want to be a fishing law specialist or a criminal law specialist when people are applying to us. So just make sure that you send the right bit of the form to the right chambers. And coming with that, make sure that you look interested in us as a set of chambers. So have a look at the website, have a look at our Twitter feed, see which cases we've done recently, and just try and show a bit of interest in what we actually do. My next point, and this is something that leads on from what Rosie has said, is set out your experience and how it's relevant to us. Being at the bar, it's in part about being clever and academically successful, but it's also about, certainly in my areas of law, and I think in most areas of law. It's about dealing with quite humanly difficult situations. So if you've got some life experiences that you can tell us about on your form which are relevant, tell us about them. And as Rosie said, I include in that, if you've done a lot of mini pupilages, or if you haven't, or if you've come through the Sutton Trust, don't just tell us that you've done those things, but what you've learned from them. So it's no use to us just to have a string of achievements like I've done 40 mini pupilages. Tell us what you've learned from them so that we can see who you are and what you're about. When it comes on to actually marking the pupillage forms when they arrive, as Rosie has said, we apply a set of criteria so that we're as transparent and fair as possible. And those criteria are set out on our website. I've got them in front of me now. I think it's not really enough just to say, so the first of those criteria is intellectual ability and the second is expressive ability. It's not really much good to us if you just say, I'm very clever and I write very well. Try and use what you might know from other areas is a competency-based approach. So if you want to show us that you've got commitment, drive and efficiency or interpersonal skills, try and give us an example of why it is that you've got those. So under intellectual ability, obviously you might just tell us that you've got very good exam results. But under oral expressive ability, you might tell us that you did very well. It needn't be in a mooting competition, but just tell us how in a discussion with somebody else, you managed to win the argument. That sort of practical example will enable us to give you marks for that competency. And if you don't give us practical examples, we can't really give you the marks. So try and give us practical examples. And then just finally for me, just talking about the way we actually deal with the applications. The paper applications will come in next week. Leila will talk to you about the numbers of applications that we have. We do a paper sift, so we allocate the applications to markers in chambers, and this year each application will be marked by 3 different people. And then there's a moderation exercise carried out by the heads of pupillage. And then we have a first round interview, and we will give everybody, if we follow last year's process, a case to look at before you come in, and we'll ask you questions about it and then some other questions. And then we have a second round interview. And finally for me, I would like to reassure you that in doing all that, we are, as I said, transparent and fair, or certainly that's what we aim at. We have our equality and diversity obligations and commitment very firmly in mind as we go through that process. And we welcome applications from people from very diverse backgrounds. And actually, if you look around chambers, you'll see that people from very diverse backgrounds have been successful. So I think that's all from me. I encourage you all to apply. I encourage you to think that we will treat all the applications fairly and transparently, as I said. And the most important single piece of advice from me, finally, is to be yourself in your application form. Don't try and tell us what you think we want to hear. Try and tell us what you're really like and why those qualities and achievements will enable you to be a good barrister. So that's it from me, and I'll just hand over to Leila.
Thank you, Judith. Hello, I'm Lelia Di Domenico, and a little background, probably quite irrelevant. My first job was with Opera Australia as a singer. I think that's what they were referring to. Then I came over here 20 years ago, and for 5 years I was a PA and scheme administrator for one of the top international blue chip companies. Then 15 years ago, I came to Chambers. I ended up in Chambers because a friend of mine who I went to school with in Australia was working as the legal secretary and administrator for Chambers. And it's kind of a testament to the dedication people have to Chambers is the fact that she said to me, take the opportunity if that's what you're looking for now, because it's dead man's boots around here. So basically, that is how I ended up in Chambers, and 15 years later, I'm still here. I am the legal secretary to Chambers and the pupillage administrator. I basically will start the process with the pupillage committee. We have been leading up to this moment now where the gateway will close. We will receive in excess of about 300 applications. Of those applications, we will then sift in about 7 teams of 3 people, right down to about 60 applicants who will make it to the first round interviews. At the moment, as Judith said, we will be holding the interviews on Zoom, and I will be arranging that with you. So I will be the face of the other end of the email that you're going to be talking to. And please don't be afraid to ask any questions, and I don't bite. Also, then after that, it then works down to our final approximately 15. We usually like to then interview for our final up to 3 candidates. And then the journey continues from there as such. But please do ask me any questions if you have any. And I think that's about all from me.
Brilliant, Lelia. And check out her YouTube. She's still singing, and she's still singing brilliantly, which is fantastic. Are you going to talk about the actual interviews, Judith and Rosie, or yeah? Because otherwise I can. I've interviewed quite a number of times, and so I'm happy to cover that.
Let me talk about the interview. So if you get through to an interview, the first round, as Lelia said, will probably first round interview somewhere between 50 and 60 people. So large numbers, because we like to try and make sure that we sort of give you the benefit of the doubt at application stage, really. So it's something unusual about your form. We'll try and give you an interview. And one thing I should have said is the way we take mini pupillage into account at the pupillage selection stage. So if you've done a mini pupillage with us, you will have done a written assessment. We do take those into account. And if you're on the cusp of getting an interview, if you've done a really good mini pupillage, it will move you up into an interview slot. If you've done a bad mini pupillage, it won't move you down. So that's the way we approach it. It's an upwards, not downwards movement. So the first round interviews will be have panels of 3 people. We will give you a case in advance, but we, as I said, we want to really find out what you're like. We'll ask you some questions about the case, and then we'll usually give an ethical problem as well, and put questions to you about that, and then ask you a couple of questions from your CV, and give you the chance to ask any questions of us. So that would be probably about 20-25 minutes. And the second round interview, a bit more legally rigorous as you might expect, that will be 3 people as well, probably me, I think, for this year, and probably Charlie Corey Wright and somebody else, so that we try and have a balance of practice areas and a balance of seniority. So again, we'd give you a case, we'd ask you some questions about it. We aim to be very careful and not to make it easier for people who've done, for instance, a BCL, as opposed to just doing the law conversion course. So I'd only done the law conversion course when I came to Chambers. So we try and make sure that the questions help us to decide how good you are at standing your ground, how good you are at thinking on your feet, how clever you are, but they don't advantage people who've done more law or a lot of mooting over those people who haven't done all of that. And then when we've done the second round interview, then we'll have a session to go through the candidates, and then we will make our decision. And again, I would emphasize, if you come for interview, people get very nervous. That's absolutely understandable, but try and remember, when you walk into the interview, we are egging you on to succeed. And if you stumble, if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to stop, start again, think, take your time, and just be yourself, really.
Brilliant. Thanks, Judith.
Just jump in at the end of that, if you can hear me. I know my connection was a bit poor earlier. During my first round pupillage interview, I knocked over my water glass, and I'm still here. I only spilled a bit of it, but still, it was really embarrassing. And I dropped my pen, and somebody asked me, one of the first round interviewers asked me, "What are you reading at the minute?" And of course, I was expecting a sort of arcane legal question. I was thinking, gosh, articles. Like, what I came out with was, "What you mean, like books?" Like, yeah, books. But everybody was very kind and very welcoming. And in fact, as a general rule, there was only one pupillage interview, and I won't name the set, ever. And I did about 25 or 30 where the atmosphere was anything less than kind and friendly and willing you to succeed and say, you know, the things that will help you. the bar is a really friendly place to be, and you don't go on pupillage interview panels if you're horrible and seeking to humiliate people. That's just not what you do. So it will feel awful and terrifying, and you will be fine, and it will be fine. So good luck.
Thank you very much. And the sort of things that I would add to that on interview, and in the same way as Rosie been looking at lots of applications, I've done an awful lot of interviews, both for pupils and tenants and staff and all sorts of different things. And I would say that there's never necessarily a right answer. It's not that there's a right answer. People are looking for how you've structured your answer, especially in pupillage interviews. So think about how you structure it, think about how you answer it, be logical, especially in the legal analysis questions. As Rosie said, expect the unexpected. Have positive and open body language. That's really important. And as all of you will probably be interviewed on Zoom, that's really important even on Zoom. It's sometimes more difficult to engage on Zoom, isn't it? And you're probably all very good at it, but do check your Wi-Fi, make sure that you're somewhere, so that, as with Rosie, you don't sort of drop in and drop out. Make sure that you're somewhere that you can be heard. Check your background. I think Gethin's disappeared, but he obviously has something he didn't want you to see, so he put up his 39 background. You would be amazed at how many ironing boards I have counted in the last week alone. And it can be a bit distracting, so have something plain as a background, and make sure you can be seen clearly. So if you're sort of zooming out of us from the shadows, it can be also a little distracting, and so that you're well lit and that we can hear you clearly. Prepare for your interview. Please be confident, or appear to be confident anyway, and remain calm and professional throughout, and enthusiastic where appropriate. Don't rush your answers, and look like you're engaged in the process, and and want to be a pupil wherever it is that you're interviewing. And Charlie would like to add something in here. Charlie.
Yeah. Sorry, I put my hand up rather early then. I wasn't meaning to interrupt. I just wanted to say this in the light of a couple of the questions that have been posed, which this seems to be a decent moment to mention it, although there may be more to be said at the end. In terms of the application process as a whole, but with specific reference, I think, to interviews too, people have posed questions about whether the particular university you went to is important. I think it's actually, Oxbridge was actually mentioned in the question. That raises an important issue. It's one aspect of a wider issue about wanting to, the concerns that people rightly have at the moment, that the bar inadvertently replicates itself when it really, really shouldn't. And also there was a question about whether we do blind marking in terms of university locations, etc. And the approach we have is we do not favour those who went to particular universities, whether Oxbridge or Russell Group universities or whatever. We don't mark blind for two reasons, really, because first of all, because where you're looking at references and things like that, it's very often ineffective to rule out consideration of the university or other academic institution concerned. But also because we regard it as so important that we don't favour people who come from particular backgrounds and disfavour those in relation to others. It doesn't automatically follow that we don't want all information about it, and that is that's important. In terms of the more general question about diversity, again, coming from me as a white middle-class man who's head of chambers, probably many of you will be taking this with a pinch of salt. But all I can say to you, and I hope you believe me, is we really do care about the idea of ensuring that there is a proper level playing field here.
Thanks, Charlie. So I'm just going to pick up on a few of the questions, and thank you to all of you that have joined our open day or open afternoon and stayed on board. Thank you for all the questions. Colin, I'm going to ask this one of you because you said you wanted to be a barrister since you were 10 and you've made it. Has the reality of a career at the bar matched your expectations?
Oh, wow, that is a really good one. What I can say is, at times, like with every job, you wonder what it would be like to have a job that just was 9 to 5, you go home, and that's it. But the plus side of being a barrister is every week brings different cases, different challenges, incredibly interesting issues, and you are in control of the show. You decide what areas you go into, you decide the cases you get involved in. So in terms of the ride, in terms of the interest, it's fantastic. And I don't think I have heard anyone, certainly not in these chambers, say anything other than that they were thoroughly delighted to have chosen this career.
Brilliant, great answer. Thank you very much. Jake, we've had a question to the current pupils about your experiences in pupillage, and I'm going to ask you one each. So what has been your most difficult moment in pupillage to date?
Oh, I saw this question and I prepared my proudest.
Oh, well, you do proudest, and Nyasha, you've got 2 seconds for most difficult.
Well, maybe that's cheating a bit, and not what a barrister should be able to think on their feet, shouldn't they? But yeah. My proudest moment was I did some cross-examination prep work for Paul Darling QC, which he then went on to use, some of at least, in an arbitration that he was doing. And while it was a terrifying experience, watching him put questions that I had helped write to witnesses, of course I was worried that I'd missed something. It was also an amazing experience to see a leading silk actually use something that I'd done. So that's my proudest. I can think of a most difficult if that would be good, but
no, we're going to put her on the spot. Nyasha, on the spot.
This moment right now, perhaps, yeah, being put on the spot. No, actually, I think what's most difficult is because of the 4 different seats which all pupils do over their time of pupillage, you get to a point in your first seat and you're not kind of an expert at construction law at that point, but you're 2 months in and you've just about learnt the ropes to the extent that you're not at the steepest incline, and then the rug is pulled from under your feet and then you have to start again. What is brilliant about it is it means that the learning experience is so intense. I've had lots of I mean, a kind of undergraduate degree and masters. I do not think that I have been learning at as quick a pace and on such a diverse range of topics at any other period in my life before this one. So that is both very difficult, but also incredibly rewarding.
And very challenging. So it does need a lot of support, I would have thought. Yeah, so great that you've got people around you. Rosie, there's been a lot of questions on mini pupillages, and I don't want you to answer them all, but there's been some around, when are we going to open for 21-22? When are people going to hear about this year? How many are there going to be? I just wondered if you could just give us like a brief update. And obviously, thank you to the Mini Pupillage Committee because they've managed to keep a sort of virtual mini pupillage going through the pandemic year, which in itself is amazing. So thanks for that. But it's a very different sort of experience, I think.
It will be a very different experience. We've had some people in already who have told us, and I hope they weren't just being nice, that they really enjoyed it. So update, I've answered a lot of the questions in the chat. So if you did put a question into the question and answer bit, look in the answered one and see if I've covered it. Applications are, so I've just finished marking mine. I think I was the last one to finish. So we're going to send out offers very soon. And we're also going to let you know if you haven't got one. We're not just going to leave you hanging. So if you haven't heard from us, it may be that somehow your email has just slipped off a chain or something like that. So if you haven't heard from us by, say, the middle of or end of next week, do get in touch, because somehow, you know, we may have accidentally left you off a list, but offers and also notification if you haven't been successful are coming. I will reiterate for the 97th time, for anyone who hasn't caught the answer, if you don't get a mini with us, don't not apply for pupillage. So to put it the other way, do apply for pupillage even if you haven't got a mini pupillage with us. We don't require you to have done a mini with us. It's helpful, it's useful, but we can only take so many. And I have to say, we mark out of 24, and we are only able, because of the number of excellent candidates, we have only been able to offer to those who have achieved a score of 21.5 or above. And 21.5 is pretty great out of 24. So please be disheartened. It may be that you just hadn't heard my excellent advice on applications before you wrote your mini application. Do still apply to us for pupillage. We're not going to discriminate against you. Just a brief update on, in other words, we are going to try very hard to get as many as we can in before first and second round interviews for pupillage, to give the pupillage committee the benefit of your brilliance during your mini pupillage. If you're not applying for pupillage with us this season, we will put your mini later into the year to allow those who are applying for pupillage this season to come forward and get as many of those candidates in as possible. But we are trying to get you in. And there's lots of information about our mini pupillages on our website and what the kind of thing that you'll do. Obviously, it's all very different, but we're really trying to give you a flavour for what Chambers is like, and of course, the all-important assessment. I have been asked a question about the assessment. We pitch it so that it's achievable for everyone. It doesn't matter if you've done a GDL or only a bit of a GDL or a PhD, you should be able to engage with this in a constructive and positive way. There's no research, and we give you the bundle. So, but I'm not going to tell you anything more about it. And even if you ask us anything more about it, we won't tell you. That's it. That's all you get. So I hope that's helpful.
That's really helpful. Thanks very much. Judith, I'm going to come to you and ask, there's been quite a number of questions about academic, is there any point if I didn't get a first, how important are our academics? How do you prove your academic credentials? And even a question around, do you look at A-level grades? So there's been quite a lot of questions around that. And I wondered whether you could just give us a bit of guidance about that.
Okay, that's fine. I would just, picking up on what Rosie said, I'd just like to emphasise that if you didn't get mini pupillage, don't let it put you off applying for pupillage. We don't even know necessarily unless you tell us that you've applied for mini pupillage and not got it. So, but if you get one and you do well on it, it'll help you. But it doesn't matter at all if you don't apply or if you don't apply and don't get one. So in terms of academic background, we hardly look at GCSE results. We do look a bit at A-level results, and we do of course take A-level degree results and postgraduate degree results into account, because one of our criteria is intellectual ability. So of course we take them into account, and it's probably fair to say that if you've got a 2-2, it's going to be much more difficult to get an interview than if you've got a 2-1 or a first. Not impossible. If you think that there are reasons why you didn't do as well as you might have done, extenuating circumstances, you need to tell us that. So I'm just going to look at what we say on our website about it.
Can I just pick up on that, Judith? And it was a point I was going to make at the end, and I'm really glad Judith's made it. And it goes for everything on the application form. If you have a special circumstances or extenuating circumstances, gosh, it's as Rosie said, if you don't tell us about them, we won't know about them. So please do, if it's any to do with anything at all on the application form and you feel comfortable in telling us, please let us know, because otherwise we can't know. Sorry, Judith.
No, I was going to say, so if you've got a 2-2, but you've gone on to get a good postgraduate degree, or you've had a very successful career since university, which you think shows that you're able to demonstrate very high levels of intellectual ability, then say that on the form. If there were significant mitigating circumstances when you did your degree, you need to tell us that. if you have done your degree abroad, it may be more difficult for us to make an assessment of how good your academic results are, simply because we don't know the system. So if that applies to you, it's just helpful to try and explain for us what significance your overseas results have compared to UK results. Now, it may be impossible for you to do that, but just bear in mind, it may be more difficult for us to assess them if you've come from a non-UK system.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. And A-levels?
Well, we do look at them. So if you've got staggeringly good A-levels, we'll look at them. I think they're not as important as your degree results. And as I said, although your form will usually show your GCSE results, it's unlikely that those are going to weigh significantly in the balance.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Another question was around mooting. Is that an obligatory characteristic or obligatory? No. And it's not obligatory to have done mini pupilages with us or anywhere else. You know, we understand that people get different kinds of experience, both legal and otherwise, and all of your past experience is important to us.
And I vividly remember starting at City University, and there were a lot of people who've got connections with the law, who'd done masses of mini pupilages, and I haven't got the foggiest what they were talking about, really. So if you've done quite a lot, put them down on the form, explain what you learned from them. Obviously, it's going to help show that you're really interested in being a barrister. If you haven't done any, but you've got other ways of showing that you're interested in the law or interested in coming to us, just put that down on the form. And certainly mooting is not a prerequisite. Again, if you've done brilliantly at it, good, tell us on the form. If you've got other ways of showing your advocacy skills, put that down on the form.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Well, I want to say, and there have been lots of people on the Q&A session saying how helpful they found this, and to thank all of you very much. So I'm going to do that on their behalf and say that I found it very interesting to know. For some of you, I didn't know how you got here, so that's great. I'm just going to go around very, very quickly. I know that you've all been looking at the Q&As, all of the presenters, and just see if there's anything that anyone wanted to pick up that I haven't given out to you. Charlie, was there anything you wanted to pick up?
Very, very briefly, I just wanted to stress the point about mini pupillage not being a prerequisite. It's sort of been covered already, but we are well aware that there are many applicants who are very deserving, who don't have the time or resources for whatever reason to come and do a week or even some what might be available, just 2 days of mini pupillage. That is not something for which people should be penalised. And that's one of the reasons why we do not remotely regard it as a prerequisite.
Thanks very much. Colin, anything that you wanted to pick up either on the questions or anything else?
Yes, I mean, this really goes to all the issues we discussed in the question and answer session. And that's that do remember that it isn't over until it's over. So one of the best interviews I've seen was someone who got the question completely wrong in the first 5 minutes, but recovered brilliantly, showed us that the candidate can think on their feet and kept going. And I think the same goes for mini pupillages. I think all of us on this call who are in Chambers have a big file of rejection letters that came our way when we were at your stage. The ones that make it tend to be the ones that keep going. And that's one thing I would encourage.
Really good advice, thank you. Judith, anything to add?
No, I would reiterate that. I think we can all think back to terrible interviews, places we really wanted to go where we came out feeling it was dreadful. You don't know until you finally know, and don't let it put you off, keep going.
Right, Rosie.
Absolutely. I came out of a second round interview, went into the loo and probably burst into tears, and that was one of my 3 offers. So you can't, in fact, as my mother always says, and if mother says it, she's generally right. If you feel like it's been a really hard interview, you've seen the traps and the difficulties and the complexities of the question, and that probably means you did brilliantly.
Thank you. Ruth, any questions that you saw that you wanted to pick up on? Or
well, there was one I could relate to. There's one question in the Q&A saying, in response to the existential question of why do you want to be a barrister? How do you answer that question? And I must say, I do remember in a desperate moment one time Googling it, even though I knew that I want to be a barrister, so I don't know why I didn't just back myself. I think that's a general theme of when you're filling out the application form and you're asked existential, boring, maybe questions like that, I think about what the real answer is. Really do reflect on, why would I like to do this? Why do I think I'd be good at it? And then try put it together in a way you think is a good answer. But don't think that there's one way you need to speak or one way you need to sound, or that there's only one answer we're going to accept. Think about what you're truly feeling, and then write it in a way that Rosie said is grammatically and correct and has all the right spelling. And I'm sure then it'll be a brilliant answer.
Right, that's really helpful. Thank you, Ruth. Sheraton.
I think the only thing, I mean, we've said it all before, but really just to say that I think you really would be quite hard pushed to find another set that demonstrates the practice diversity that you will get if you have a pupillage here. I don't think many other places would be able to offer you that, really. And like a lot of the barristers have said already today, the areas that you think you want to do, they may not be the same towards once you get into your early years. So here you will get the opportunity to really look at all different areas of law and not be pigeonholed in any way.
Brilliant, thanks, Sheraton. Nyasha.
Yeah, I think as somebody who's 4 months in and has felt that I've had a really brilliant kind of introduction to the job of being a barrister, I just have to say that, yeah, the course of the next year is making sure that I can acquire all the skills to hopefully succeed in tenancy and beyond. And that I really advise that you think about kind of the extent to which, when you're looking at the application, that you will be somewhere, but you will also have a period during which to acquire lots of skills, and look closely at Chambers websites to think about some of the brilliant people that you can learn from, because there are some very exciting people around. And if you've got something that you're interested in, but you're at a point where maybe you don't know much about it yet, look at those who are already established and have a think about maybe expressing to Chambers that you would like to work with them.
Thank you. Jake.
Yeah, I think I was thinking just then that I hope it's kind of come across on this call that Chambers is a really friendly place, and it's not a place where you're expected to drop your personality at the door and become a kind of put yourself in a box. You know, Nyasha and I have only been here for 4 months, but I at least feel like I don't have to kind of hide myself away, as much as it's also the case that I have to make sure I'm doing the things that a pupil has to do. But I think that is a really wonderful part of Chambers, and I can thoroughly recommend it.
Lelia, thank you, Jake. Lelia, was there anything you wanted to add? Any questions you wanted to pick up on?
There was something which I failed to mention, and I apologise if anyone did actually mention it while I was answering a different question on the Q&A. But as part of our commitment to making sure that the process is fair, we anonymise the first part of our process. So, and that takes out any personal details, and we use the anonymised version of the application through the gateway. So just thought that was worth highlighting.
Brilliant, thanks, Lelia. Gethin, thank you for coming back. Anything you wanted to pick up on?
No problem, thanks. No, I would just reiterate everything that has been said, particularly by Colin and Judith about
okay,
the
so I'm going to bounce you into a question, and because we're almost done. So somebody has asked me to ask all of you, and I'm not going to ask all of you. I'm only going to ask Gethin what your most memorable time at the bar has been. So give me that one.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
Well, this is a great thing about it's such a varied. It's been such a varied couple of years, and there's so many different experiences. I'm going to cop out and not select a single one. I mean, I have to say, I think I did pupillage with Ruth and James Bradford, and I think when we all got taken on as tenants, and that was particularly memorable, and sort of celebrating that all together and culmination of the end of pupillage.
I'm glad you can remember it and you didn't just end up in a drunken stupor, so that's good. Very well done. Dan, if you're still online, I'm going to ask you that question, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to prepare for it. Hannah, anything you wanted to add?
Nope, just to say, yeah, show your desire to come to the bar through your application form. Make your application special and different, and let us see why you should be joining Chambers.
Brilliant. Dan, are you there? I don't know. He was in a hearing, so he might have gone, or maybe it was the threat of my question, or whoever put that question in, which was a good one. No, I think he's gone. Don't think you're there. Dan? No. Is there anyone, are there any of the other presenters on, you know, that I can't see who are there hiding away that have anything to add or any questions to answer? No. Okay, well, I'm going to draw it to a close. We're only a few minutes over. I hope you don't mind, but I thought some of the questions were quite good. And so thank you very much. If we haven't answered your question, we'll try and do so by writing back to you. All I would say is thank you for joining us. Thank you to all the presenters, and be yourself, because yourself is who we're looking for, and yourself is who you are, and that's what's important all the way through. So thank you all very much indeed, and good luck. Bye.
Good luck.